What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and today I have got a great episode in store for you guys. We have officially made it past the holiday special, and we are gearing up for 2023. But before we head into the new year, I got some great news to talk about with you guys on the show today. We're going to be talking about some MLB news, as well as the New England Patriots and their recent struggles against the Cincinnati Bengals, and a whole lot more. So I'm really excited for what we got in store for you guys today. But first, I want to welcome in my guest to the show today. He is a co-host on the Dog Talk radio show, and he's also a member of Bryant's student programming board. Mr. Carter Santos, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Great, Brian. Thank you for having me. I've definitely been wanting to come on, down to the wire, and it's the perfect time to do an episode, I think, together because of how closely we worked on Eovaldi. And I know you did an emergency episode for the Xander Bogaerts signing, and I think it's great to get on and just talk about Nate not being a part of the Sox anymore, and just the Sox position right now.
Yeah, no, obviously, Carter, we did work on that interview that we did with Nathan Eovaldi together. I posted about that on my social media page. It was a great opportunity for us. I think that, being able to sit down with a major leaguer like Nate and, get to know him a little bit better and ask him some questions. It was really a great experience. And obviously at the time, we didn't know what his future was going to look like with the Red Sox. Obviously, that future has now come and gone. He has signed a 2-year deal with the Texas Rangers worth $34 million. Obviously, congrats to Nate on the contract. It's a great deal. I wish him all the best in Texas, but that was, a main reason I wanted to get you on the show today to talk about, how things may have transpired with Nate. Cause obviously, we can, there are like certain things that we could debate as to whether Nate was going to come back to this team or not. But, Carter, even during our interview with him, because we had talked to him behind the scenes, kind of learned a little bit about
Right.
where he was at, but even in public with him, when we talked during our interview, he had said that, he never explicitly said, I want to come back to the Boston Red Sox.
I think he actually used the words, "I hope to come back to Boston," something along those lines.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, even if it was never explicitly said, he still dropped hints as to saying, like, all right, I would still like to come back to this team. I mean, when I talked to him about Christian Vasquez,
Yeah,
um, you
that
know,
was a
I,
huge topic of conversation too.
Yeah, because we talked about like how that impacts a locker room, and obviously,
Right.
he told us that day, Christian Vasquez, that he was actually going to be catching for Nate that day, and when he got traded, like they had to like take him out of the locker room and make sure he
Right.
could like steal like any, he couldn't like basically tell the Astros like, hey, this is the strategy for today off Nate, like this is how we're going to hit today, and it was kind of a weird situation because no one really knew what was happening at the time, and
Right.
when we talked with him during our interview, he ended up saying to us, like, hey, I'd love for Boston to bring him back next year. And just him saying that, it was like, all right, he wouldn't be wanting Boston to just bring back a guy to bring back a guy. He would want Boston to bring back Vasquez so he could have his battery mate back. And I think that, there were at least some tea leaves pointing to, all right, this guy wants to be back with this team. And I think, this offseason probably, I think, kind of sour the deal a little bit because, Xander Bogaerts was a big guy that, the Red Sox were obviously trying to get back. He's our captain. He's the heart and soul of the team.
For sure.
He goes out and signs that massive deal with the Padres, 11 years, 280. And then obviously Vasquez goes and signs with the Twins.
Twins, yeah.
And this offseason kind of blew up in a sense with the Red Sox. So what are your thoughts on everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always like to look at the positive first, Brian. I mean, I think one of the
Sure.
positives to take away, and believe me, there aren't a whole lot, is that, the Kenley Jansen signing, I don't love that specific move, but they've definitely boosted the bullpen, I think. I think for the first time in a while, I mean, Red Sox teams in the past, especially like the Achilles heel has been the bullpen, and I think for the first time in a while, the strongest part of our team, I think, right now is the bullpen. I mean,
Mhm.
we certainly have a lot of question marks. A question mark at shortstop right now. Who knows if we're going to move Story over there. We've definitely missed out on some free agents, especially Dansby Swanson. That was a name I heard thrown around a lot, and I believe he just signed with the Cubs.
Yes.
I don't know. How much money did he get? I don't know.
I believe it was 8 years, something in the 140
Yeah,
range. I
eight
think.
years. So yeah, I mean, there's a question mark at short. We missed out on I mean, guys like Correa, and I mean the shortstop market. Obviously, Xander was there. The shortstop market was really there was a lot of options there. There's certainly a question mark behind the dish. Are we going to stick with Reese McGuire, Connor Wong? Are we going to go forward with those guys? Are we going to go out and trade for catching? Because I think Chaim Bloom is really he's managing this team like the Tampa Bay Rays, and we're not the Tampa Bay Rays. You know what I'm saying? We're a larger market. We like to go out and get those big name guys. We don't like to necessarily trade for our talent. So that's where the kind of I think disconnect comes in with Chaim.
Yeah, I
That's
agree. I do agree with you there. And that was even something that Nate had voiced to us at the time. He never said this is Chaim Bloom's fault. Like
right.
he never said to us like, hey, I have an issue with Chaim Bloom. He never said that. I want to put that out there. But he did end up saying like, hey, why aren't we going? Hey, I really hope that we can, lock down certain guys. I think that there are certain players that I want to see back on this team. And, I don't know why they haven't re-signed yet. It wasn't necessarily throwing blame at the front office or the ownership, but you could see that he wanted his guys to get secured, and obviously they weren't at the time.
Absolutely right. And, obviously in, making the deal for Nate to come to Bryant, we knew he lived in Texas. And I'm sure that had a little bit to do with the decision he made too, is, I live in Texas, my family's in Texas. So, I mean, and he grew up in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So that is probably, was pretty big in his decision and saying, oh, wow, I could be a Texas Ranger too. And I remember him mentioning something that, he got drafted with the Dodgers, he won a series with the Sox, and he won the pennant in the Astros ballpark Minute Maid.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge like little triangle for him in his career. I don't know if you remember the exact like what exactly he was referencing when he was talking about that triangle of teams.
Yeah, I do actually. So, when we asked him about him, we talked about him being in Texas, and I think this was something we both talked about behind the scenes and on stage though at the same time.
Right.
And he, because we ended up saying like, oh, who was like, someone you really took inspiration from when you were younger, and he ended up saying, oh, Nolan Ryan. Obviously, I'm in
Right.
Texas. That's my guy, and I was like, 100%, I
I
get
remember
that.
that.
And I ended up saying like, oh, were you a Texas Rangers fan? He goes, actually, I was an Astros fan growing up. And that's, where the whole Nolan Ryan thing, that all came into play.
Right.
And basically what Nate said to us, he ended up saying that basically it was kind of a holy trinity in that 2018 playoff when he got traded to the Sox. It was the fact that, he beat the New York Yankees, which was the team he had played with previously in that wild card round. I mean, in the ALDS, the team he had previously played for. In the ALCS, he beat the Astros, which again was his childhood team. And then, like you said, we beat the Dodgers in the World Series, which was the team that drafted him. So for him, it's actually really interesting. It was kind of a full circle experience for him being able to come back and do that. It was crazy.
Right. And I also remember there was I don't know if it was one of our questions or it was an audience question, and it was along the lines of like, who would you love to play with? Who is there a player you'd love to play with in the future? And he said Jacob deGrom.
He did say
Jacob deGrom signed a massive deal with the Rangers just now too. So I don't know if that had a small part to play in the decision, but he's from Texas and Jacob deGrom was there, so I think it's just a really great opportunity for him. To stay home, pitch in his home state, and pitch with a guy he's wanted to pitch with throughout his career.
That was actually something I kind of forgot about. Yeah, no, I remember at the time, obviously the Rangers weren't even like on deGrom. I mean, it was on deGrom's radar, but this is when free agency was just starting. So we didn't know where anyone was going to go at the time. And actually, wow, that's crazy to think about, the fact that he did mention Jacob deGrom was a guy he wanted to pair up with.
He did. And that
obviously at the time we thought that was maybe going to be with the Mets, and it was like, oh, like maybe the Mets
throw
a boatload of money like they have with other guys. But yeah, that is
one of the guys.
Crazy.
So one of my suite mates, one of the guys who worked on the committee with us for the Eovaldi interview, actually, that was the text that I found out Eovaldi got. Oh my God, they all like it made it kind of clicked in my mind. But
Carter, I think we lost you there for a second. So you were talking about getting a text from one of your buddies.
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So what I was saying was he actually worked on the committee with us for the Eovaldi interview, and that's how I found out Eovaldi signed with another team. He texted me and said, Eovaldi got his wish. He's now pitching with deGrom. So then I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And, I kind of made a joke of what an insightful question I asked Eovaldi, because I think I asked him that question. I'm not sure, though. I was kind of joking around. But,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far
We can check the tape.
yeah, we can roll that back. But I mean, it's definitely sad. Evaldi's going to be missed. I mean, just the spirit he brought to the team, and obviously that 2018 performance that we talked about in the 2018 World Series was just unforgettable. He's a Red Sox legend forever.
No, absolutely. I mean, I talked to him about that heroic performance he had in that game 3 of the World Series. And he still seems like he like is disappointed with the ending of that game. Obviously, he let up that home run to Max Muncy to end the game. And while a lot of Red Sox fans see that as him like, kind of taking the bullets and, basically saving all the other arms in the bullpen, he was still mad at himself the fact that he couldn't finish that game on his own terms and possibly get the win for us, which I mean that's just that just shows how much of a competitor that he is, that the fact that all these years later he still wishes he could have finished that game and really gotten that win. I mean, he pitched his heart out in that game. I mean,
It
and
just shows how much of a competitor he is too. I mean, what did he go 6 2/3 in a World Series game like that,
and he
to,
also
to
and again, Carter, he also pitched in games 1 and 2.
right, exactly. And he wanted to start the next game too. I mean, Cora's like, you're not going today. And he's like, no, I'm good. I got second day soreness. So yeah. So I thought that was, he's really, it just shows how good of a competitor he is. He's just a horse too on the
Yeah.
mound.
No, he
Yeah.
definitely is. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say he is a horse on the mound. That's something that he obviously that him and DeGrom both emulate. My bad.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's something that they both have in common, and they're going to be a dynamic force with Texas. I mean, you look at them, and Nate's obviously a good 2 guy. Was our 1 for a majority of the years here in Boston, but
3 straight years he started on opening day. I mean, we
yeah,
mentioned that in the interview.
yeah. So I mean, like he was I think he was like one of only like 12 Red Sox pitchers to do that in history.
Yeah, yeah, that was the stat on that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously he's proven his worth here. He's been around, and he's had to battle back from injuries too. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries in his career. And
Exactly.
he's resilient, and he's able to go out there. He's able to battle every single day, and he's just really good at what he does.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, Brian, you cut out for a sec.
I was just passing it on to you to kind of go
Oh
off.
yeah, no, he we can't just say enough about how good of a guy he is too. I mean, he answered every single one of our questions, every single one of the audience questions. I mean, he said I think he was honestly just as nervous as me and you were, or me even a little more, because he said he never does stuff like that. But just really a great guy. He has great character. He's a family man. You know, he really took the time to answer every one of the audience questions too. When we had him, we interviewed him. And I can't say enough about how good of a guy he is. And like I said, he's going to be seriously missed in Boston. Just that spirit he has on the field, and obviously performance wise. I mean, yeah, it's just like tough. What I was going to say before, it's just tough to kind of put your finger on what the front office is doing right now with the Sox. I mean, they're for sure in rebuild mode. I think they have at the moment the worst roster in the AL East again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, by a long shot too. It's really not close. But I mean, like I said, I looked at positives. I mean, we are bulking up the bullpen, which is a positive. But we just made a deal with Corey Kluber, which is interesting. Obviously, I think they needed a replacement for a starter. We don't know where Sale's going to be, and he's been up and pretty much injured since 2019. He hasn't pitched a full
Yeah.
season since we won the series, I think, in 18. So, um, you know, question marks at I mentioned this before, but question marks at shortstop and catcher. Where do you play Kike now too? Do you bring him back to second, or do you keep him in the outfield?
Yeah.
And then as we were talking about before, Masataka Yoshida was a deal, and you were saying that you thought the Sox overpaid for him.
So I don't necessarily know if the Sox overpaid for him, but from reports I've seen in certain clips, basically there are MLB insiders that are saying, they talked about the process of these Japanese players and how they come to America and how they, play in the MLB. And basically what happens is there's a system over there called posting. So what happens is the player isn't necessarily a free agent, but teams will make players eligible to be bought and then be brought over to the MLB. So this happened with Daisuke Matsuzaka back when the Sox brought him over in the early 2000s. At the time, it used to be a bidding war for a posting fee. So I think the Red Sox had to pay $50 million just to talk to Daisuke, just to talk to him before a deal could even be done. And
Yeah.
they've since reworked that. I think now it's like $15 million. So that way each team, it's not like a bidding war anymore just to talk to the guy. And
Sure.
and that's basically how it works now. With the Red Sox, what happened with them, and what typically happens with the posting fee is once a guy is posted, there's like a 30 to 45 day window in which teams can negotiate with the player and work out a deal. And usually, I guess what teams will do over this period of time is they'll try to build as much value for the player as possible. And then at like the 11th hour, we'll sign him to a contract. According to, according to like these sources, the Red Sox offered Yoshida such a deal that he was signed within 12 hours of being posted. They didn't even need to like wait the full month or anything like that because they ended up saying like no other team is going to come close to the offer that the Red Sox gave this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. You talk about the Japanese players like Daisuke. I mean, Daisuke wasn't what they thought Daisuke was going to be in
Yeah.
the MLB, But I mean, there's obviously we had Koji Uehara in 2013, and he was lights out. He was amazing for us. Big part of why we won the series then. And obviously Shohei is a huge success coming over. So
I think basically it's a flip of a coin.
it is
You're either going to get someone who's just like a utility player, like a rotation
right,
guy that you'll maybe get in there every now and then, or you get a Shohei Ohtani, you get an Ichiro
right,
Suzuki, you get these
right.
amazing players
Talk
that are
about guys
generational
like
talent.
G-Man Choi, on the Tampa Bay Rays. So I hope Masataka is going to be great. I hope he's going to be a potential All-Star. We'll see. Like I said, like I guess they haven't come to terms with Devers yet. We're still waiting for a deal there, and I can't say I'm too optimistic about that. They will. In
Yeah.
term, they they've had opportunity to do this, and they had opportunity with Xander, and I can't, like I said, I can't say I'm too optimistic they will come to terms with Devers.
Yeah, Carter, I think that Yoshida might have more success this year than he would have if he came over earlier
Hmm.
in his career. And the reason I'm saying that is because from what I can tell, he seems to be, a slap hitter. He can, I think he can take the ball the opposite way, but I think he's also a big pull guy. And traditionally for lefties, that can usually hurt them a lot because of the shift. Obviously, with the shift now,
Shift is banned.
the shift is now banned in the MLB.
Right.
I'm not even the biggest fan of it, but the fact that it is banned, and defenses aren't going to necessarily be able to, take away those hits from him. He might have a
Hmm.
lot more balls sneaking to right field than he would have had he come over 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Another thing interesting with him too is I watched like the signing, the press, they were all there and he was signing his contract and he tried his jersey on and everything. And Heim said he's going to play left field,
Mhm.
so how he's going to adjust with with the Green Monster, it's going to be very interesting to see too. And Dugo was playing there too, so I don't know if they're going to move Dugo to right or I heard some.
I think that's
Yeah,
probably the most logical thing. I think that Yoshida isn't necessarily the best defensive outfielder.
right,
Mainly bringing him over for his bat, and it's not that
right.
he's a big power bat. I think he had like 25 or something homers over in Japan, which usually translates to about half as many at the
He
big.
can definitely hit for average too, Brian, because I saw he batted like 321 in Japan too, which was, I mean, that's really good. So,
No, absolutely.
yeah, I mean, again, like I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on like what you think they're going to do with Kike too. I mean, he's only signed through this upcoming year, and are they going to bring him back to second, or are they going to keep him in center? I think he's really good defensively out there. I mean, they were talking about what's Jaron Duran's role going to be in this team too? Is he going to play more of like a starting center field? And another bright spot that I wanted to mention was Tristan Casas. They just brought him up, and he's supposed to be the future. Hopefully provide some stability at first base that we haven't really had a lot of stability there since I'd say like Mitch Moreland left the team. It was always a big hole there. So I think Casas was one of the number one prospects in baseball too at one point. So I think there's a real positive at first.
Yeah, Costas is a good prospect. I like what he can bring to the Sox. He's got really good power. Like, so there are some balls and he's a good bad ball hitter too. Like, there can be some balls just like completely out of the zone and he just golfs them over the wall. Like, so
Absolutely.
So he's able to, if he's down an account, he can probably take some of those bad pitches and, possibly get a base hit out of those, which is really good for a guy like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
and not even get a base hit because he's got tremendous power too. Last
Mm.
year, obviously down at AAA, I worked with the Woo Sox over this past summer. He had been dealing with some injuries, so he was rehabbing a lot of that summer. So we only got to see a little bit of what he's probably capable of. I'm excited for what he's got in the future. Defensively, I'm not too sure as to how he's going to be, but we do have Justin Turner. Obviously, I know he's been a third baseman, but
Yeah, Justin Turner. What did you think of that move? I mean, it didn't wow me. Like I saw that move and I wasn't like, oh, this is great. We got Turner. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's a guy who's a vet. He won a World Series in 2020, although it was a 2020 abbreviated season. I think he's gonna probably fill that DH role. Kind of. Because we have Rafi at third and Casas at first, but he could also fill in for those guys on days that we want to rest Rafi. But um, what do you think about the Justin Turner signing?
yeah, so I think that with the Turner signing and even with the Yoshida signing, a lot of people have been saying that the Red Sox don't have a plan this offseason. And, sometimes I even feel like that. But I think but there are pieces of what they've been doing to where you can actually see a plan developing. Do I like the plan 100%? No, but I can at least understand what's kind of happening. When the Red Sox dumped Eric Hosmer and got rid of a bunch of these other guys, they got rid of a lot of guys that were striking out a lot. And I think that with the Yoshida signing, one thing I've heard about him is that he rarely strikes out. He's at least going to put the ball in play majority of the time. And even a guy like Justin Turner, he's got tremendous power and he's also a pretty solid hitter for average as well. So I think the Red Sox, they're just trying to build a team that can put the ball in play, make the defenses actually have to go out there and make a play. And, they're just going to try to, put the ball in play as much as possible and actually.
That's a good point too, Brian, because a lot of these small market general managers like Heim used to be in Tampa, and I know like Billy Bean in Oakland, and we know all Oakland's kind of wonky strategies that they love OBS
Yeah,
up.
OPS,
They love
on base percentage.
just getting on base and they hate striking out. So that's a really good point too. That could be just what they're looking for in a guy like Justin Turner. He gets on base. They hate the strikeout. So that's a really good point too.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't pay a guy who's going to hit 40 home runs a year, you might as well,
Right.
get the guys that are going to maybe hit 20, but also have a good average. That's usually
Right.
what these teams try to do. And obviously, I'd like the Red Sox to go out there and spend, the money that they have on their payroll, but that's obviously not happening right now.
Another guy that I wanted to bring up too, to kind of fill in that shortstop hole is Marcelo Meyer. I don't know if you're too familiar with him. He's a left-handed hitter. Um,
I'm very familiar with Meyer. He's the number one prospect in
for
baseball.
sure, for sure. And
He's at least another year away at this point. So
yeah,
I think as of
but
right
I think
now,
there's potential there. Like I think,
oh
like
no,
for sure.
there's potential. He's the number one prospect in all of
Yeah,
baseball. If he pans out, he could be better than Xander Bogaerts ever was, especially
right.
defensively as a shortstop. While I love Xander and what he does for the Sox at short, defense was never the big thing for him. He was always a more offensive production. We always were banking on him for his offensive production. And not that he was a liability at shortstop, but he wasn't going to make the play that, the play like the wow play.
Right.
He was going to make the casual play. Maybe he might surprise you here and there, but he's not going to be Andrelton Simmons over there making these insane plays.
Sure. I mean, I've watched Marcelo play, and just like the game comes so easy to him. I mean, that lefty swing he's got is just it's pure beauty. And like you said, what he does defensively is really it's insane. For he was drafted out of high school too, so for how young he is too. Xander came up. Xander signed his first contract with the Sox at age 16. So I think getting those guys at such a young age and just like developing them, like you say, he is a year away. So I think he could be someone to definitely fill that shortstop hole and maybe kind of contributed to why they didn't fully give. I understand that they didn't want to give Xander 11 years. I would not have wanted to give Xander 11 years either. I think that was that's too long for a guy that's 30 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Carter, the reason I'm not saying the Red Sox should have offered Xander 11 years, 280. No one is actually saying that. Like no one in Boston is like, I would not have wanted the Red Sox to give Xander Bogaerts that the Padres did. I'm glad Xander Bogaerts got this money, and I'm glad that, the Padres actually, were willing to do something like that for him. That's not the big argument here. The fact is, the Red Sox probably could have gotten Xander Bogaerts for half this money in spring training of this past year instead of offering him 4 years, $90 million.
That's fair. Like not
Because
allowing him to go
because
into
they
free agency.
because they lowballed him, they disrespected him, and he basically said, like, okay, like, what the hell? I'm gonna go to free agency now. If they had come to him and they said, like, all right, we're gonna give you, like, I don't know, like, I can't really think of a number, but I like if they were to say, like, all right, we're gonna give you like 8 years, like 160, like, or like 180 something. I don't know. Like, I'm just throwing a number out there. But if they were to like give him a more respectable offer, give him some longer years, and get him at
That
least
also kind of messed around
$1.
with the fan base too, because they,
Oh
they they
yeah.
said they were giving him one offer and they didn't really go. They kind of, like you said, they lowballed.
Mhm. Yeah, which is something the Red Sox have traditionally done. And they did it with John Lester, they did it with Mookie Betts. And what frustrates me about the Red Sox front office is that, you know, they'll lowball their hometown talent, like the guys that they brought up through their system, but then they'll spend big money on these, unknown talents that, have had success with other organizations, but haven't really proven themselves in Boston. Guys like Hanley Ramirez come to mind, Pablo Sandoval, Carl Crawford. And it's like,
Yeah,
why are these the characters you're gonna, pay big money to? But when you
right. But our
develop,
homegrown guys,
yeah, but
you
when you
you you're gonna lowball.
yeah, but when you develop a prospect and they show and they've shown that not only can they compete, but they can compete in Boston, which is not an easy task.
No,
Why don't you honor them? Why don't you honor them with a big contract? That's something that's always frustrated me with the Red Sox.
I 100% agree. I mean, John Lester, especially at the time, was very frustrating, and obviously Pablo Sandoval was a horrible signing, one of the
Yeah.
worst in recent years, one of the worst in probably baseball history. So I see your point.
Mhm. I mean, obviously, another team that is not having any issues with spending money right now, the New York Mets. They have been spending money galore this offseason. They have been just bringing in a whole boatload of guys. Obviously, the big centerpiece guy that they've brought in recently was Carlos Correa. They were able to poach him away from the Giants after he originally had I think it was a 13-year, $350 million deal with San Francisco. The Giants didn't like what they saw in his physical, so the Mets swooped in and literally within a day offered him, I think it was,
That's a big risk to take on a guy, though.
yeah,
Right after he fails his, or Giants are not liking what they're seeing with his physical. That's a really big risk. I mean, I don't know, Uncle Steve, man, that's what they call him on social media over there, Steve
yeah.
Cohen. He that's that's high risk, high reward for sure. But
No,
they're obviously
100%.
all in. I mean,
Yes.
they've been getting pieces for the last 2 years. Obviously, you go back to the Francisco Lindor signing, and they traded for Javi Baez last year at the deadline. Obviously, Javi went to Detroit. Um, they went out and they re-signed Nimmo, I believe, this offseason. So they're for sure all in. Them and the Padres, I think, and the Phillies, those three teams, I think, are definitely, obviously the Phillies were right there, Padres were right there last year too. So those three teams, they want a championship and they want it soon.
Yeah. No, they're obviously gunning for a championship. And, the main concern right now with Carlos Correa is the fact that he might fail this physical with the Mets, or at least the
Yeah.
Mets apparently are having some problems with it. This does surprise me, the fact that, they were willing to jump right in and offer him this big deal, knowing that there could be a concern. I think the concern is with his leg, but I'm not 100% sure what it is.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, I just want to touch on that infield for a second, though. I mean, you look at Correa at third, Frankie at short, McNeil, Alonso, that's nasty. And then you're talking about Scherzer, um,
Verlander.
Verlander, and Senga, the guy they just got from Japan. That top three in your rotation is really good too. And then the outfield, you got Nimmo and Mark Canna and Starling Marte. So I mean, that's nasty right there for
Mhm.
sure.
No, they have a really nice rotation and just like a great roster overall next year. So, the Mets are definitely going to be. They probably will be the team to beat in the NL East this year. Obviously, the Phillies took the pennant last year, but I think that the Mets may have just put themselves over the top if Carlos Correa is able to go out there and perform. Obviously,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the Phillies they bolstered up too. They signed Trey Turner. They gave him money. Um, they have Bryce obviously. Their payroll's insane, dude, bro. Like they're paying Bryce what 450,
yeah, I think so.
something around there for the rest of his career. I mean, they definitely got guys, Reese Hoskins, JT Realmuto, and they just signed I think what's his name? Ty. You know who I'm talking about? Phillies just went out and got another starter to go with Nola
Oh,
and
Taiwan
Wheeler.
Walker. Taiwan Walker.
Taiwan Walker, yeah. And that's a good piece too to add with those guys behind there. Going back to the Mets, they gave Edwin Diaz all that money too. And to have Timmy Trumpets in New York for long term is big time. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. I think the Mets, like they're what's insane for me about the Mets. Obviously, they're in New York, and obviously Steve Cohen has money, so like he's going to go out and spend it and try to build a championship team. And I think what we're seeing really from I think what's really frustrating, like these Red Sox fans and fans of these other markets, is that the Mets have never traditionally been a big market team. Same thing with the Padres. The Padres have usually been the definition of a small market franchise, and until about 10 years ago.
Right.
And guys like AJ Preller come in, Steve Cohen, and they decide, all right, we're going to spend big here and we're going to go get these guys. And it shows that, okay, like guys like John Henry and the team, like they can say like, oh my God, like the luxury tax, it's such a problem right now. The Mets don't give a damn about the luxury tax right now.
Neither than the Padres.
Yeah, they're trying to go out there and they're trying to win a championship. So if the entire team was still like, if the entire league was operating as normal and these teams are still playing we're still kind of a small market franchise, and it was really just the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Cubs like making these big deals, it could be like, all right, well, the MLB is just operating as they are and the Red Sox are trying to save some money. But when you have the Padres trying to spend this money and they're paying Xander Bogaerts 11 years, 280, you can't you can't
Yeah.
you can't hide behind that anymore. You're being cheap. And
Right.
and for this team, like you don't have the talent to make up for that. We're probably going to be a 90 loss team next year. And the fact that we're still
100%.
and the fact that we're operating like this, it's ridiculous. In my opinion, I talked with one of my buddies about this the other night, and we're kind of right on track for where the Red Sox typically go with GMs. We bring in a guy like Ben Sherrington. We had him, I think, for like 2-3 years, and then we fired him.
Boston was calling for his head in 14, when
Yeah.
he got
And then when
fired.
he finally got axed, we brought in Dave Dombrowski. He just said, screw all the prospects. We're just going to build the championship team. We did that. We built everything up. And obviously a year after that, he was canned and we brought in Chaim Bloom. Chaim Bloom's coming up on that 3-year window right now. If it gets to around the deadline or even into August and, this team is really just going downhill, he's probably not going to make it through the end of the season. We're either going to see the same trend that John Henry typically does, because that's what he does. He really kind of just like lets history repeat itself. He's either going to do that or he's just going to be really intent on saving money, probably trying to get out with the Red Sox, sell the team, buy it. Like he's trying to probably sell the team, sell Liverpool. He's probably trying to like buy the Commanders or like set up some team in Las Vegas.
I think he already sold Liverpool, Brian. I think he already did that. I'm pretty sure he sold Liverpool.
I think he's just trying to get out of the game at this point.
You certainly have a point there. Another thing I want to touch on with the Padres, it's almost like they go out and get all these guys. And it's almost like, where is this money coming from? Because they're not a team that traditionally does that. No. Like you said, like they've recently, like in the last 10 years, like they've been a small market team, but they've come up. I mean, Machado was a huge deal. I mean, no one really knows what's going on with Tatis right now, with all the, performance enhancer stuff. But Soto they gave away, 4 prospects for Soto?
Yeah.
I believe. I mean, that's a huge deal to give away that much in your farm system for one guy. I mean, they're really, really all in. I don't know. Is Snell signed back again too?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. But Darvish hit free agency. Am I wrong with that?
I believe you are correct on that. I have to what his status is.
But yeah, I mean, they're a team that tradition doesn't do that. And they're, so if the Padres can do it, that's the frustrating part. Because it's like, if the Padres can do it, why can't we? We're being cheap. We're the Boston Red Sox, so it's just a tough period being a Sox fan right now, because it's like we loved all these kind of guys we've had for a couple of years who won the series, and those homegrown guys like Xander and Vasquez are kind of they're leaving officially now, so it's like it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow,
Yeah, and I think like you said, this team, you could understand them getting rid of Xander Bogaerts here. I frankly don't. I think that they should have paid him. but you see Marcelo Meyer as the future possibly. And, there's a path with that. I don't see where you cannot pay Rafael Devers here.
I don't either. Yeah.
Because Chaim Bloom went on the Section 10 podcast and he said, hey, I know having to get rid of Mookie Betts sucked, but we did it so that way we'll never have to do that again with guys like Xander Bogaerts and Rafi Devers. He said that. And now Xander Bogaerts is out the door because they decided to lowball him. We apparently have all this money now. Are you going to spend it on Rafael Devers, or are you going to let history repeat itself for the 1, 2, 3, fourth time now? Like, what's going to happen?
And that kind of goes back. That kind of goes back to my point earlier too. Like he's managing the team like a small market right now. Mm-hmm. We're not a small market. We're not a Tampa Bay Rays who and they're like they get wins by doing that. They'll trade guys here and there, but when does there come a point to say, oh, we're gonna go spend some money here and get a big name? That's I think where the crossroads hit. You know what I'm saying? So it is frustrating, and it's almost like I don't want to say they don't want to win right now, but they're just letting all these guys go, and like the market was especially for the shortstop position was really really good. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's like we didn't really come out. We kind of came out losers because we lost our homegrown shortstop. He's out west now. We don't have to see him or play him. But the Yankees, they signed Judge for 9 years. You know what I'm saying? Like they get their guys back. They went out and they got Carlos Rodon. They got the starting pitcher they need. Now they probably have one of the best rotations in the American League. So it's like, and we're gonna have to see him 11, 12 times a year. So it's rough.
Yeah, no, it is gonna be rough.
Personally, I think the Blue Jays are better than the Yankees, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on how that all transpires. But Carter, I want to switch things up into NFL news and talk about another team that has been frustrating a lot of people throughout the winter. That has been the New England Patriots. They find yet another way to lose after looking like they were possibly gonna do what they did in the good old days and have a good old fashioned comeback. We faced the Cincinnati Bengals, went down 22-0 at halftime, and it was like, oh boy, this thing could get ugly real quick. And we managed to put up 18 unanswered points in that second half and actually, somewhat mount a comeback. Mac Jones had that unreal Hail Mary tip play on 3rd and 29. Does prove that he can throw a Hail Mary now. So at least
you got a point there.
Yeah, at least we now know that. And it was like, wow, this could be, in my opinion, if they had won that game, Mac Jones could have said, all right, this is my moment. This is this is where I can say I'm a starting quarterback in this league and I am capable of beating these high level teams.
It's so uncharacteristic of Bill Belichick to have those late game errors too, especially with the Raiders. He always coaches teams that traditionally, shut down and, step on the throats of their opponents in the fourth quarter. And, but recently, obviously, it hasn't been that way. I mean, I think we're just very young, and it's hard to close out games when you have such a young roster. I mean, Jacoby Myers and first of all, Ramondre lateraled it back to Jacoby, who tried to lateral it back to Mac, and I think they're young, and quite honestly, just dumb decisions are being made. It starts with the play calling, and then it goes to on-field decision making. Obviously, everyone knows Patricia and Jones aren't getting along right now. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But it trickles down, from Patricia to the on-field decision making.
No, I definitely agree with you. It definitely trickles down. And I know a lot of people, it's been revealed that, hey, the players took it upon themselves to make that crazy lateral play that happened in Vegas and is probably one of the dumbest plays in NFL history. Mm-hmm. I know that the players took responsibility for that, but you don't see well-coached teams do this. I know, obviously, the year the Pats won the Super Bowl, we had the Miami Miracle happen to us, but that's a defensive breakdown. We had Gronk in the end zone. It was like, What the hell's happening here?
Yeah.
And that's on defense, and, that's a wacky play.
You don't see, not only don't you see well-coached teams doing that, you don't see Bill Belichick coach teams doing that.
No, but at the same time, do you see the Chiefs making a play like that? Do you see?
No.
Did you ever see Juju Smith-Schuster throw the ball across the field trying to get it to Patrick Mahomes on a play like that? No, you never saw plays like that. So it's like you kind of have to just, there is a reality check there, and I look at the team right now. I was like, okay, there seems to be somewhat of a plan here. We're actually starting to kind of mount a comeback. And when Ramondre fumbled again in this game and gave up the ball, he's probably our best offensive player. And the fact that
Right.
he had yet another breakdown in this week, it's like we can't catch a break right now. And for a team
Yeah.
right now, where the situation we're in, the fact that we're still making these mistakes 14, 15, 16 weeks into the season, it's it's very uncharacteristic of the Patriots. Usually by the time you hit December, that's when they're in their stride and they're unstoppable. That hasn't been the case this past 3 years. So we've been kind of a mess, you know, since like
Last year
2018,
we were a mess. We
2019.
lost going into the playoffs to Miami, to Buffalo, and then obviously we got blown out by Buffalo in the playoffs. And if we beat, I think if we beat Miami, we would not have had to play the Bills. We would
No,
have played the Bengals last year, and we couldn't beat Miami in Miami. So
no.
definitely going to be very interesting this upcoming week. Obviously, Tua got concussed. Is he going to play, or are we going to see Teddy Bridgewater? Probably not. I don't. As of right now, I don't think Tua will play. But it's a must win. And like you said, it's very frustrating that our best offensive player, Ramondre Stevenson, fumbles. And just a time where you can't fumble the ball. I mean, a lot of people were saying that the whistle should have been blown and he should have been ruled down of forward progress. But I mean, that's just debatable at this point. Bottom line is that you look at what could have happened, how they could have played better in the first half, especially offensively. I just don't think that Mac has, and I don't really blame. I'm one of those guys that's kind of behind Mac. I'm not blaming Mac for all of the bad stuff that happens on offense, but I think it's a lack. I think it's play calling, and I think it's a lack of weapons that we have at receiver, and it showed with Brady in his last year too. Like that team that lost to Tennessee, he didn't have the weapons at receiver. Like, we have to, Bill's got to go out and either draft somebody or we have to go get somebody in free agency this upcoming offseason to help just bolster up the receiving threats.
No, I agree. I mean, I'll say this. I blame a lot of the mistakes that we've seen offensively on the coaching, but there are some clips I've seen lately that do make Mac culpable in, a lot of these mistakes. One example of which was in the past game. I think that Mac, it was like he ended up hitting, I think it was Jacoby Myers on a crossing route over the middle. And then when you actually zoom out the play, you see Tyquan Thornton absolutely beat a DB, and he's just running a post route right to the end zone wide open, and he misses it. And it's like, that's not on coaching at that point. That was the quarterback just missing the wide open guy. And, that's stuff that he needs to hammer down and get better at. And if he's not figuring that out right now, you kind of have to wonder, is he the guy moving forward? I think that as of this year, you do have to kind of reset and say like, okay, this has been a crapshoot year. He's had really bad coaching. Maybe some of his greatest assets and kind of just analyzing the field. Maybe that's kind of all just junk at this point. I'd like to see them get Bill O'Brien back in there and try to, run offenses similar to what the Patriots ran during their Super Bowl runs. Obviously, Bill O'Brien wasn't necessarily there during he wasn't the OC during, those runs specifically, but he ran offenses similar to Josh McDaniels. And I think that getting something like that back with Mac Jones, especially since, Bill O'Brien coached Mac at Alabama,
Right.
it could bring back some familiarity and possibly, have Mac see some of the success that we saw from him in his rookie year and build off that.
Right. And another thing I want to mention with the play calling and such too is that Kendrick Bourne had a really good game. Got in the end zone. I think he was like the top receiver in week 15 or 16. I'm sorry.
He was the highest graded receiver. Yep.
Highest graded receiver of the week. And like, where's that been all season, right? I mean, like, why isn't he getting more targets? I know he had. That's why I know he had some controversy with Patricia earlier in the season, missing a meeting or whatever. But you know, why haven't we been targeting him with the ball there? And I also want to ask, like, your opinion on the reports coming about Mac's dirty play on who was it, Eli Apple?
Yeah, I've been seeing these plays, and I really don't know. Like, there are a couple different plays he's done now. I think one was against the Panthers. He's kind of like kicked guys, done different plays here and there.
Yeah.
And I saw the play he had on Eli Apple. I don't know. I mean, like that, I think you could make a case for him, like actually throwing a block there, and
Yeah.
but I don't know, that was kind of a sketchy play on him.
Personally,
I think
like, I think
I think he
Ryan
does need.
Clark.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I think he needs to get fined once. If you give him a good fine and you say like, "Hey man, cut this out," like, what are you doing? Hopefully that will knock it off. I mean, I don't think we need to get to a suspension for him for this to really get out of control. I think if this isn't like a Vontez perfect situation to where he's doing things like with malice, and it's like obviously some of the things he could be doing is with malice, but Vontez perfect was like taking people's heads off. Mac isn't necessarily doing that, but he is kind of doing these little dirty plays here and there. I think if you slap him with a fine and you say like, "Hey man, like cut it out. Like we're not trying to suspend anyone here, but what are you doing?" Hopefully he will learn from that and just like back off a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Like hit him with a fine. I think RC Ryan Clark going on first take and saying, comparing Mac Jones to Grayson Allen and saying he's a dirty player is a little over the top,
Mm,
um, for sure. Like I don't think the accusation should be taken that far. Like I think like you said, like I could definitely make a case that he was trying to lay down a block, in that play, and that was a really funky play too. I believe that's when he kind of like flicked the ball out with his non-throwing hand when Bondell, I think, had his other arm and he was trying to bring him down. That was the play before, I think, the Hail Mary on third down and forever.
yeah.
But I thought it was really I got really excited when Myers scored that touchdown, but I thought I felt good for Jacoby to score that touchdown, especially off that kind of luck, because it was kind of like, oh, this is like a little bit of a bounce back from the mistake he made against Vegas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating, Brian, because it's like if you look at some of the games that they've lost this season, like you go all the way back to the Bears game, and if we just played better overall in that game, and you go back to the Vikings game, and if Hunter Henry, got that I thought that should have been a touchdown, the Hunter Henry controversy on Thanksgiving. And you look at they had that game under control until the special teams, and again, it's another uncharacteristic thing for a Bill Belichick team to give up a kick return touchdown like that. We're just not used to seeing it with Bill. So I think when the kick return happened against the Vikings on Thanksgiving, it totally changed the momentum of that game. If you go back to some of those games that they lost early in the season, and you go back to Vegas too. I mean, 4th and 10 with like a minute left, you gotta find a way to close that out. And if you even look at the touchdown that they scored with who was it, Keelan Dawson's foot, I mean, that looked out to me. So I think it's a couple of bad breaks, and just if you look at those games, we'd be in prime playoff position right now. We'd be where the Chargers were, clinching the spot. I think so. It's very frustrating right now for the Pats.
No, I do agree, and I think that it's weird because we could probably be 10-5 right now, but we could also be like 3 and whatever, which is the thing, because we don't our talent isn't at an insane level, and I still give Bill Belichick credit for being able to do some of the things that he does, but
Especially defensively,
oh yeah, defensively we're
100%.
a lock this year, but offensively it doesn't seem like there's a clear signal going on right now, and it just seems like
Yeah.
there's a lot of confusion with that team. And I wish that they could just clear it, like they could clean it up. And I, I don't I don't know how much like of an influence Josh McDaniels can have on Mac outside, like on the outside of the like on the like outside of like of the playing field, and like just like interacting with him in practices and stuff. But obviously you can't take that and and exactly copy that. But I mean,
Yeah.
for Josh coaching it for as many years as he did in New England, I'm surprised that a guy like Matt Patricia just can't say like, "Hey, we're just going to copy what Josh did and just like run this similar offense." I don't know why we had to completely, uproot the offense and change everything.
Yeah, it's just like some like the screens they try to do. Like there's a play against Vegas where I think like Ramondre was just in the flat and they like faked it out to Thornton. And he like just totally like just Ramondre wasn't open. He airmailed it to Ramondre. Like it's just plays like those that you like, and it's like it's those small things. Like you look back and like, oh, that was a horrible play, and it's 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10. Now it's now it's hard to get a first down and continue the drive. And against the Bengals, there were in the first half, especially many boos coming down on Mac, and it's just like, when is there a point where we're going to draw up like some, like you say, like some Josh McDaniels type of play and really look like we're an efficient offense? And that's not what we're getting with Patricia. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree with you there. Carter, I wonder, do you think that there is a possibility at all that, Bill O'Brien isn't here next year. We don't bring in a legitimate offensive coordinator, and we actually see Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in these same roles next year. Do you think there is a potential path where that does happen?
I certainly hope not.
Yeah.
Honestly, with Bill, anything's possible. I guess I do see a world. It's not the world I want to see
No.
specifically, but I don't think it's the world that a lot of Pats fans or anyone really wants to see. But maybe Bill says, "Hey, we're gonna, do what you said. Go totally like a McDaniel's offense, and like sit down with Patricia and say, this is what we're gonna run, and this is what's gonna happen here, and this is what we're gonna do week to week." And that does happen, and I don't think we see improvement. I don't really think anyone thinks that we're going to see improvement, but that's a really good question. I mean, I think there is a world, but I really hope not. And if that happens, we're not taking any steps forward. We're
No.
just doing the same thing over and over again. And that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing that is not good over and over again.
No, yeah,
So it's kind of insane.
Yeah, we'd really just be spinning our wheels at that point. Man,
Right.
I don't know. The path I see where it happening is that, I'll give the Pats credit. In that second half, they took over that game against the Bengals, and they won that second half 18-0.
Right.
The Bengals did
Right.
not score in that second half.
Right.
I think what Bill could see is he could end up saying, like, all right, our defense was able to shut down one of the better offenses in the league. And, after halftime, after these adjustments, we were able to come out there and actually have some solid production. Still had some errors at the end, but the offense was moving. There were plays actually going on, and we were able to push the ball downfield. If they're able to do that maybe against the Dolphins next week and get that win, and then, possibly put up some points against Buffalo, I don't think that we're going to win that game, but maybe even squeak into the playoffs and possibly upset some team in the wild card round, get to the divisional round. And, I'm not saying we'd make noise past that, but if we were to get into the playoffs, Bill could go to a guy like Robert Kraft, or just like say, like, hey, we got back to where we were last year. No one thought we were going to be in this position. Why wouldn't I run it back with the team that just got us there? Now we're going to have more experience under our belt.
Right. And like I said, I always like to look at the positives, and like playing meaningful games in December is always a positive. I mean, to even like be in a playoff spot in playoff spot contention right now is a huge positive. I mean, look at what Marcus Jones has done. I mean, he's been a huge part of why we're even in the position we're in, and he won the Jets game for us. And he had defensively it was tough for him guarding Chase and Higgins, and they're going to get catches on him. But, what he did, he got a pick six on Joe Burrow, and the defense played great in the second half. I mean, Joe Burrow threw 3 interceptions, and that's like, I think it was 3 interceptions, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, Joe Burrow throwing 3 picks in a game as a defense. I mean, I'll take that any day, Brian. You know what I'm saying? I mean, 1 pick six too that kind of got us back in the game there.
Yeah, Marcus Jones has been an incredible player for us
really
this year. To have the offensive touchdown against the Bills, and then the punt return, the pick six, like, he's been tremendous this year. He is.
You
awesome.
can't like not bring him up when you talk about the Pats. I mean, he's 100% the future, and like, I mean, there's like, Cole Strange has been pretty solid up front too. So I mean, interesting that they, a lot of people didn't like that they took a guard from Chattanooga as their first round pick, but like Bill just knows that kind of talent, I guess. But I think they're just really like a couple of receivers shy of being a threat, and better play calling. Obviously, I think that's where they're at.
No, I agree with you there. I think that they really have a good opportunity moving forward. Obviously, Carter, before we do end of this episode, I just want to do a quick minute on JJ Watt. Obviously, he just recently announced that he's going to be retiring at the end of this year. And I just want to say, what a career for him. I mean, I remember when he came in the league, and just he took the league by storm. And the fact that some people thought that he was going to be a bust, and the actual player that he turned out to be is unbelievable. He's one of the best defensive players in NFL history. And it's just weird for me that, I'm at the age to where I can now watch someone get drafted, have a Hall of Fame career, and then retire. And, I know obviously he's going out at 33, which is incredibly young. He's still going to have a full life ahead of him. He's going to be, he'll probably get into commentating, doing some stuff around the game. So he's not going to necessarily be going anywhere. But it's just crazy that I've been able to see this entire Hall of Fame career for him, and one of the greatest careers of a defensive player ever, just transpire.
100%. I think, he's a great guy. He does a lot for the community too, and his charities and everything. He had probably had multiple Walter Payton of the Year nominations. And like you said, like to the point of like now we're at the age where we're able to watch guys have a career and come into the booth. Like look at the Thursday night crew. Like we see Richard Sherman now. We see Andrew Whitworth on the panel, and it's almost Ryan Fitzpatrick's another guy. Like it's almost like we watch these and like it's almost like weird for me now because like I watch these guys on like the post game and pregame show, and I'm like, oh my god, like I actually saw like I don't have to ask my dad where'd this guy play or my mom where'd
Yeah.
this guy play. Like it's almost like I know where these guys play and I know what kind of career they have. So it's really like you say, it's really interesting. And like you say, there's a boost job waiting for JJ Watt anywhere he wants it, Fox, CBS, whatever you have it,
100%.
and
And
NFL Network. So like you said,
it,
he's not going anywhere. So like I said, just a great guy and great career. I'm really sad he didn't get to win a Super Bowl. I would have probably like that would have been the cherry on top. And I'm sure he was probably sad about it too. But he's a loyal player. He stayed in
oh, yeah.
Houston for a long time until obviously Houston's just poverty right
He
now.
stayed
But
in there until I can tell you
yeah,
the bitter end because
really,
during his time there, things got ugly.
it did.
You saw the thing with Easterby and
Yeah,
the way the organization was going down there,
yeah,
and O'Brien kind of blowing stuff up in the front office, and it was like, wow, this is
yeah.
getting ugly.
The
And
reports coming out that they didn't want to win games, like
yeah,
all that stuff. So
and he was trying to stick through to the bitter end, and obviously after the 2020 season, he requested his release. They granted it to him. He went to the Cardinals and had a solid 2 years there. Obviously, he dealt with some injuries as well, but I forget what season it was. I think it was 2014, I believe it was. He had that insane season. He probably should have been the MVP. He had 5 touchdowns that year, including 3 receiving touchdowns. He was just I remember like there aren't many players like that you just have to completely game plan for on the defensive end. He was one of those guys. Like Darrelle Revis is probably another. Like you just had to know, like, all right, you're facing Darrelle Revis. You're not going to have your number one receiver that night. JJ Watt
mhm.
was another one too. It was like, all right, how the hell do we guard this guy? The Pats used to be pretty good at actually figuring it out. Like they were actually solid at it, but
Right,
other teams, like you just knew JJ Watt was just going to be all over the field that day. And he was.
right,
And like, he's just one of
right.
those guys that you could always count on to make a play.
TJ is kind of the same way, his
Yeah.
brother, and he's still got more years, hopefully. So
Yeah.
he's out on injury right now, but hopefully we'll see more from him. How about the Steelers too? On side note, like they kind of came out. I mean, they're hanging in by a thread too. So we had
Mhm.
a big win over Vegas, but we also should have had a big win over Vegas. So
No,
we'll
yeah,
see how it transpires.
no, yeah, 100%. The Watts, I mean, that's just an absolutely wild family. Like
Oh, insane.
the younger brother, it's Derek, correct? Derek
Derek,
Watt.
yeah,
Yeah.
Derek Watt.
I mean, they're all just really good at what they do. I mean,
They are.
they're very, very talented. So, I'm congrats to JJ on a great career. I wish him the best in retirement.
They're
Um,
doing.
but yeah, Carter, we are now officially down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up what we talked about in this episode and send you guys on your way. Obviously, if you guys aren't following Down the Wire at this point, what are you guys doing? We're available everywhere you guys can stream podcasts, whether that be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. You can also follow this. You can also watch this show on YouTube, as well as follow us on Instagram at down.to-the-wire. Again, at down.to-the-wire on the IG. Carter, do you want to shout anything out?
No, I mean, Brian, just thanks for having me on. We worked together on Eovaldi, and I thought it was like I said in the beginning of the episode, I thought it was a perfect episode to come on. And shout out to my radio show. It's the dog underscore talk. That's DAWG underscore TALK on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram and listen to our radio show on the WJMF radio station channel.
Yeah. No, these guys do a great show. If you have a chance, tune in. When does your show air again?
We do our shows Thursdays at 5 o'clock, and it'll be starting up when we get back second semester. So I'll be starting up at the end of January or early February. And like I said, if you follow the Instagram account, we'll give you guys updates every week.
Yeah, so guys, follow that. Listen to the shows on Thursdays at 5. It's a great show. I've been on it a couple times. It's a ton
Yeah.
of fun. But yeah, obviously we welcomed Carter Santos in the show. Carter, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast having you here to talk about everything from Nathan Eovaldi and everything that transpired with that. I did want to say one thing before we did go on him. And I remember when we were behind the stage and Becca Giacovoni, who did the presentation for us, and it announced this coming out. She brought up you working with SPB and everything that you do. She mentioned that I was the GM of WJMF. And then when she got ready to mention Eovaldi, she's mentioning like all these accolades, and she says like, "Oh, please welcome Nathan Eovaldi," and he points at himself and he goes, "Hey, that's me." And I don't know. That was just a moment for me where I just realized like, oh, he's just a guy. I love this dude.
Yeah,
Like Nate is a good guy. Texas is getting a great player, and
there.
it sucks to see yet another like thank you video from the Red Sox. I hate having to just like see these all the time, and it's like it's just like, come on,
It's
man.
heart. It really is heartbreaking because it's like you watch these guys, and we had the luxury of having to spend a lot of time with Nate with the interview, and I mean that was a night I'll never forget. Really,
Yeah,
I'm sure you won't either. So I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, I could.
like I said, we had a very unique take on it, seeing him. I mean, only a month and a half ago. So
Mm,
it's really like you said, it's sad to see those. We saw one for Xander, saw one for Vasquez, I think too. So he will be missed for sure.
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, obviously, I was nervous about going out on stage, but um, what I'll say about Nate is that we had a lot of time to talk with him behind the scenes.
We did.
That isn't typically something I get to do with a lot of my guests. Like I think we had like a full hour with him just talking about like just random stuff, having a good time. And if it had been just like a normal podcast, like me hopping on the mic and doing something on, my laptop and doing whatever, it would have been probably one of the most calm episodes I ever did. Like probably one of the least nervous probably the least nervous I would have ever been just because of how nice of a guy he is and how personable he is. Like a lot of people, like when I meet them, like I only get to talk to them for like 10-15 minutes max before I go on air. And you're really just trying to feel out what kind of a person they are. Nate is a great guy, and you were able to really just like really get to know him really well in that like time that I knew him. And I wish him all the best of luck in Texas. That was a great topic that we got to discuss today. We also got to talk about the New York Mets being concerned with Carlos Correa's physical. In NFL news, we talked about the Pats finding yet another way to lose, this time to the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, shout out Bryant University. They actually when the Cincinnati Bengals were getting ready to practice, they practiced at Bryant's indoor facilities before the game.
Really?
Yeah, they used Conity and all that
They
stuff.
use Kennedy? Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah,
That's
I mean
awesome. I didn't know that.
it makes sense. That's where the Pats used to practice at Bryant before Gillette was built, so it actually
That's
kind of
so
makes
cool
sense.
actually. Wow. Yeah. Oh, shout out Bryant Hoops actually. They're gonna start America East action on Saturday against Binghamton, so we're all excited for that.
Yeah, as am I.
And they housed Towson over I think when was that game?
The
Tuesday?
22nd. Yeah. Oh, I was
Or
there. I got wrecked by that Sharif came down the lane and almost killed me.
Oh, were you filming?
I was filming for ESPN, and it was Sharif and some Towson player, and like the like he ended up just like running the background, and it looks so much worse on camera. It looks like I got absolutely rocked, but in reality, I just got the chair I was sitting on pushed aside. But I have the video of it. It's awesome.
Oh, you
Um,
have to send that to me. I like to like that. That's what's that like filming for ESPN? Do they give you like specific directions, or are they just like they give you camera and they're just like go?
Not really. No, it's actually it's fairly simple. I'm actually not even doing stuff specifically for ESPN. It's mainly for Bryant Athletics, but
Yeah.
you're given directions, you point and shoot.
Was Tristan? Was he commentating?
He was, yeah. We didn't
Wow.
have
Yeah. No, because I was like, they said like here with Tristan House, and I was like, is that Tristan commenting? Like that was really cool.
yeah, we were down a commentator for that game, so Tristan stepped up, did a good job.
Nice.
But yeah, so just to kind of wrap up, we talked about the Pats, talked about JJ Watt. Obviously, Carter, thank you again so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I know I know we kind of spitballed it a little bit there at the last second, but obviously hope you guys have a great new year. I'll try to maybe get one more episode before 2023, but if not, have a happy new year, you guys. From Down the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
And I'm Carter Santos.
We hope you guys have a great day. Take care and peace out.